Hey, hi, hello, and welcome home to the cozy cottage of cultural criticism that I call HomeBodyMedia, where the conversation is always thoughtfully informal and hopefully informative. This is Patrick, and today, for the very first episode of the podcast, I have five big topics that I wanted to discuss and, just run my mouth about it for a little bit. But first, I guess I should. I'm not one for lengthy, elongated introductions. I'm very succinct. Let's get to the point of why we're here. But basically, I created this podcast as a space where I get to unpack some thoughts about just shit that's been going on from the past few weeks in media and pop culture. Anything that really grabs my attention or stirs something in me to, get out my cultural criticism notepad and start picking apart. Basically, that's it. Or, if anything doesn't really catch my eye, or, you know, or anything that doesn't really I find interesting enough to talk about, then maybe I'll just do like random deep dives or into like whatever I feel needs to be talked about. Like a piece of media, a book, or a film, a social media event, another podcast, a show, album, whatever really, because pop culture and media extends to so much, right? So there should really never be any shortage of stuff to unpack here on this podcast. But again, for today, I do have five topics that have been on my mind recently and in the media. So let's not waste any time and get right into why we are here to talk some good old shit through the lens of cultural criticism. First topic. Okay, so I literally just saw the trailer for the upcoming BET original film called Karen, and I cannot stop cackling. Let's read the synopsis. Karen Drexler, a racist white woman, makes it her personal mission to displace the new black family that has just moved in next door in an Atlanta suburb. But the couple, community activist Malik and his wife, Imani, won't back down without a fight. Writer-director of the film, Coke Daniels, cites the civil unrest of 2020 as big inspiration for this project, and the girls on social media are not having it, baby.
Not on my watch. Not on my watch.
Not at all. If you happen to be one of the few people who have not seen the trailer for this film, I beg of you, please go do so we can cackle together, because it is quite a hoot. It truly looks like BET is in the running for becoming the new Lifetime channel with this one. It really does. Lifetime in blackface. Good God. BET. Long gone are the days of 106 in Park, because that's really the only time I ever really invested in really watching. The BET Awards that aired this past Sunday was probably one of their best. It was cute, and mainly because of black women and queer black folks, as we do indeed keep the culture compelling. Other than that, quite honestly, BET don't really be doing it for me. And I don't really want to just sit here and rag on BET Network too much, because in the past few years they've been trying to spruce it up a bit, with some original programming, original films, reality television, instead of, resorting to the constant reruns of Baby Boy and Medea specials as they did in the not so far past. Still, generally, there's not that much to write home about. But
Well, she tried. At least, she.
They're trying, and that's what matters, right? But we also have to remember that BET is owned by Viacom CBS, and their track record in regard to quality content is pretty wonky, to say the least. But anyway, let's focus on this specific piece of media on this specific channel. Now, I feel like I don't need to explain what a Karen is, but for posterity's sake, Karen is a pejorative term for racist entitled white women who weaponize their privilege and state violence, namely the police, as a way to control other people's behaviors, especially the behaviors of marginalized groups, people of color. And it roots from all of the viral captured incidents of white women just doing the absolute most, a la Amy Cooper or Carolyn Bryant, right? Because if nothing else, white men and violence workers in blue love to flex by assisting a white damsel in distress, especially if the distress is coming from a black beast. So it's a pejorative that zones in on how white women have been traditionally instrumental in maintaining white supremacist violence in this country and how they benefit from its fallout. And you know what? We don't really give enough credit to the nuance a lot of black slang has in expressing on rudimentary levels nuanced ideas and concepts. But that's a discussion for another podcast for another day. But yes, we do indeed have a Karen film coming our way, brought to us by BET and directed again by brother Coke Daniels, who wrote and directed the film, which stars Corey Hardrict, Tia Mowry's husband, Corey. Also Jasmine Burke and Taryn Manning of Orange is the New Black fame, who portrays the titular villainous Karen. So the film itself is not out yet, but the trailer alone has gone viral and has people out here labeling it as an SNL parody skit, a Tyler Perry production on meth, and most repeatedly a hammy Jordan Peele ripoff. And truly, after the explosive success of Jordan Peele's Get Out, many film studios began greenlighting anything black and horror, trying to find their own Get Out success in which they could be lauded for diverse representation and ride the wave of the horror craze. Because that's the mode of Hollywood capitalism, right? Especially in regard to black content. They find a version of black content that works and makes Hollywood execs a significant amount of money and gets social media buzzing, and they're going to spin the wheel on that for as long as they can, until it is tired as hell and audiences are left fatigued. We love to say how capitalism breeds innovation, but more likely than not, it gives way to derivative, safe imitation. And as a result, we have a number of shows and films that people suspect as Jordan Peele black horror copycats. We saw it with when the first trailer for the Amazon Prime show, Them, first dropped, and everyone was calling it an Us ripoff. Us is miles better than Get Out, by the way. Let's get into that. Well, maybe not miles better, but significantly better than Get Out. But again, that's another discussion for a later date. And now we have the same thing happening here with BET's Karen being labeled as a cringy knockoff of Get Out. And these premature comparisons are perhaps a symptom of Hollywood's manufactured scarcity of black talent and black content. Because black Hollywood is small as hell. It is often that the same 5 or 6 niggas have their names tapped on the most prolific mainstream projects of the year. And also why black audiences are often so hungry for more varied portrayals of blackness in media. But also, I will say at the same time, a lot of people aren't media literate enough to differentiate between similar tones and paying homage to similar films over just straight up plagiarism. This is Coke Daniels' 9th film, so he's been in the entertainment industry for a good while, making and being heavily involved with films since at least 2004. His first feature was in 2006, and it was called Who Made the Potato Salad? Hopefully no Karens, because they be putting raisins and apples and marshmallows and all sorts of shit up in there. But the point is, I've never seen any of Coke Daniels' work, at least not to my knowledge. But I did watch a few trailers and clips from his other films, some of which include Highway, Holly Won't, Parking Lot Pimpin', His, Hers, and The Truth, and one of his most recent, Fruits of the Heart. And unfortunately, they too come off as Lifetime original films full of stereotypes and cartoonishly racist white people. So Karen seems like it will fit right at home with the rest of his catalog. And this isn't to disparage Coke Daniels. I can't imagine the many obstacles it takes to make a film, especially as a Black creator. But you know, when we have Black creators on Instagram and TikTok churning out all sorts of innovative and compelling content out of nothing, no resources, no budgets, no well-known stars, it's kind of hard for me to champion work of this quality. Now again, I have not sat my ass down to watch any of his films all the way through, so they actually might have some entertaining credence to them that these clips and trailers fail to showcase, but it is just hard to see from this vantage point where. And more often than not, the material speaks for itself, so yeah. And also, I just think it's unfortunate that a number of his films star prolific Black actors and comedians who were once really, really big in like the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, and how they have to now resort to starring in such low quality films of this nature in order to work. Stars like Eddie Griffin, Tom Lister Jr., Wendy Raquel Robinson, Doreen Wilson, Terry J. Vaughn. Oh, and Lil Mama of Lip Gloss fame was in one of his films as well. Too bad she transphobic as fuck. But the point is, opportunities for Black actors, Black artists still remain in a very narrow box, especially when it comes to media entertainment, and thus Black audiences are continuously left hungry for more nuanced and multifaceted storytelling and representation. And this is a very old story, right? A very old concern. But a newer concern is how the recent boom of Black representation in horror and thrillers has become damn near farcical. Like, for example, Black Americans have long used humor to cope with the brutal realities and traumas that whiteness sustains, and the term Karen is another example of that. But I and others have recently considered how white America at large consumes the horror and satirical pejoratives of that coping mechanism and appropriates it in a way that dissects their complicity from the very real, very deadly consequences of white supremacy and how it articulates itself in various forms. This is a reason why so many now deem Karen to be too fluffy, too light of a pejorative for the actual horror that said Karens enact. So just in regard to this Karen film, the question that this concern raises is, have movies like this become less concerned with the actual Black lives subject to racist violence and more concerned with presenting shocking enough spectacles of whiteness gone wild? More outre representations of white violence and oppression at work, right? That is the problem that I had with the show Them, right? A beautifully produced project full of great performances, but the Black protagonists themselves had no characterization beyond the terror and violence that they were subject to. Like, we didn't know them outside of that horror. That horror was the thing that fully defined their entire existence. So it's like, have we come to a point where these kinds of films and TV shows have become the new Black exploitation, the new Black exploitation flicks? Coke Daniels does note that his film Karen is at least partly satirical. And again, judging from his past films, he does seem to specialize in comedy, so maybe the marketing team has done a disservice in taking the subject matter of Karen a bit too seriously as a straight crime thriller. Daniels also says that he wants to spark and continue necessary dialogues about racism in this country with this film. That is the ultimate motivation. but I don't know if I want to give a film like this too much credit in having the power to shift the public discourse on race relations, because, and again, we've only seen the trailer, but if we want to be honest with ourselves, like, there don't seem to be too much nuance up in this bitch. There just does not. Like, let's be honest. And we also know that just because one creates a piece of art or media that is on the right side of history, that doesn't necessarily make it good. Also, what's most compelling is that Daniels believes Karen to be a, and I quote, feel-good film, which I think is an interesting choice of words. But hey, again, I guess we'll have to wait and see when the film actually comes out this fall on the good old Black Entertainment Television Network, right? But in the meantime, some folks have dug up a not-so-old QAnon-leaning Instagram post made during last summer's uprisings and protests by Taryn Manning, again, the actress portraying the titular Karen. And it kind of highlights herself as yet another real-life, real-world Karen. So basically, you know what? I guess I'll just read the post. It's a bit of a wild one. So basically, above it, there's a picture of Donald Trump, that potato-head bitch, holding the Bible, you know, during the summer when he tried to do his little photo op. There's a picture of that, and below it, Taryn Manning writes, I never pop political, but I want to start by saying, if I was being attacked the way everyone attacks him, I would hold the Holy Bible too. People can feel scared right now. Donald can feel scared too. I do say with all my love in the name of Jesus Christ, my Savior, to be mindful of dragging God into the fake media and trying to pick this choice of his apart. Not about him. It's about God. This is what I saw. I don't watch fake news. #Q. Who cares? Let it ride. I am happy because Donald chose the power of the sword in his hand. #right hand. And maybe if we lifted him up rather than tear him apart daily, since he is still in office, wished him the best, and that we pray Jesus wrap his wings around the man for heaven's sake, then he could think straight and make better choices that please all humans, full of hate. Whatever it will take to shush the idle chit-chat that is only the devil's playtime. No, I don't support Trump, as you will all attack me. I support humans. Let it ride. I see his errors, of course, but let the Holy Spirit reign supreme now. Donald can be very nice, actually, if you're not attacking him constant. We are in the times of utter peril, much bigger beasts at work. I mean, for now, #game over. Remember, in the end, we win. Book of Revelations. Stay close to the cross. #Q. All I see is the Bible. That's all that matters to me. #Q. Funded protests. White antagonism. Blaming BLM. Nice Soros. #game over. #breadcrumbs. #Q. Know the #truth. Do the research. It's all there for you to see. Turn off your TVs. They got you by the ball sacks. I don't care about Trump. I care about kindness and peace. #love. Q. Do you know he saved more children from human trafficking than Obama ever did? No? Look it up. Stop reading the fake hate news and look at the facts. Look at the symbols. Mass arrests. All darkness comes to light. You think this one man is the sole problem for the globe? We are 45 in the freedom of the press. Read news from other countries. Read about the Pope. Wake. Come on. Think bigger for fun. And then she put what is that? A UFO emoji at the end, at the very end. Okay, whatever the hell all of that means, maybe y'all can tell me. She a little kooky. Yeah, definitely. She a little kooky for sure. And honestly, it sounds like some shit her character from Orange is the New Black would type up if, you know, she knew how to read and write. Really, it's the all I see is the Bible for me. Like, duh, sis. That's literally all that potato head bitch wanted you to see. They call it a photo op for a reason. It's in line with the usual political chicanery Trump and his constituents pull, and you freely fell for it. Wow. Girl. Lots of asshattery in this post. So I guess they chose the right Karen for the role. But you know, I believe motherfuckers can grow and learn and do better and change and all of that. And I don't think it's useful to judge someone's whole being based off of one offhand social media post. Even though that's quite a wild one. Like, girl, what the fuck? And actually, she has other weird, wonky social media stuff going on too. Really, I just have a lot of question marks in regard to Miss Taryn Manning. Like, sis, what is really the truth? What is really going on? But again, maybe she's turned over a new leaf and put some actual thought in stuff since then. Who knows? But in a TMZ interview, did I say TMZ interview for Karen, Taryn states, and I quote, "I felt a social responsibility to take on this role, even if I have to play the villain to affect change around the globe. Then I was more than willing to step into the role. What's been going on is devastating. It's time for change, and for me to be a bigger part of that picture meant a lot to me." Okay, ma. Okay, that's cool, whatever. She's saying all the right things, or, you know, sisters need that check. She is the top billed character in the top billed actor in the cast, so. But okay, you know, we'll go ahead and take it at face value. Cool, sis. Really, really cool. Again, we're perhaps giving this film a little too much power, but okay. It's the wig that got sis wearing in this film, though.
You know, so they call you Bob. Stop playing, you know, for the Bob.
Oh my God. So yeah, Karen, we all be tuning in this fall to watch. You know, I know I will, because I love me a good unintentional comedy, bitch. I really, really do. That's my favorite form of comedy, I think, because y'all know that it can be very entertaining to watch a flop in motion, especially one that holds itself with the utmost seriousness and earnestness. That's my shit, bitch. Truly and duly. I can't wait. It truly looks like quite a hoot, and I could really do with a good cackle. So, Mr. Kevin Hart has recently been in the media speaking about cancel culture.
Oh, Lord.
Yet again. And for someone who repeatedly informs us that he doesn't care about the critics, he certainly seems to maintain a particular anxiety about the public's opinion towards his brand of comedy. Now, for me, just for me, Kevin Hart in his comedy reminds me a bit of the young men who I would purposefully go out of my way to avoid in middle school and high school, who thought themselves to be uproariously funny and undeniably cool. And a lot of people thought that they were that as well. I certainly did not. The brand of humor and personality that repels me and makes me cringe actively. Corny niggas. Yeah, corny niggas. But hey, a lot of people like corn, so hey, do it up. And, you know, it's no shade. It's no shade if you do like Kevin Hart's comedy. Well, it's a little bit of shade, but it ain't none of my business. None of my business, you know, yuck it up. However, the point is, comedy is always evolving. Like, there's a reason why it's not acceptable to do comedy bits in blackface anymore, right? We've moved beyond that primitive bullshit. And off bat, I don't really care for stand-up comedy in any way, shape, or form. Well, yeah, not really. But I do believe that good comedians, whether up on stage or in film or in television, know how to adapt with the times. And if you can't pick up and move along with the times, then as Cat Williams said, maybe it's time to consider a new career, because you might not be as touched with the gift of comedy as you once thought. But also, you know, even if comedians don't elevate and evolve, there's always going to be a certain subset of those who will remain attached to the low-hanging fruit of yesteryear, in which marginalized groups are the punchline. So Kevin Hart and comedians like him will always have fans. And let's be real, Kevin Hart still, even with all of his obtuse fuckery, still maintains a significant fan base all over the world. Literally all over the world, bitch. He ain't no motherfucking canceled, and he never was. This is why I'm like so confused when y'all's faves have the nerve to come out and speak on cancel culture as if it's really affecting their careers in coin. Because as we've seen, Kevin Hart likes to send $8,000 bottles of wine to critics of his to prove that he is indeed that girl and doesn't need their validation. Nor does he need to apologize for the misogynoir and homophobic comments, jokes. They're jokes, you guys. Calm down. It's not like gay children aren't abused and disowned by their families every day, or black women experience a more searing version of misogyny in this country. Oh wait, damn. But really, it's not even just that the basis of so much of his comedy relies on stereotypes, homophobia, and misogyny. It's also that so much of his comedy specials center on his own family, his wife, his ex-wife, who he cheated on, his kids. Like, sir, you can't even be thoughtful about how these jokes reflect on them and might affect them beyond the comedy venue. We now live in a very social media interconnected world in which reality and the virtual are always in constant conversation. And when you're a public figure as prolific as Kevin Hart, you have influence. Your comments and your jokes have cultural credence, especially as a black comedian, because we all know black media and entertainment in this country is the most valuable commodity that is pillaged and appropriated all the time. And really not even just in this country. Sir Hart will have the insouciant arrogance to dismiss these concerns, yet pops up every other year squawking about how cancel culture is limiting his craft. Yet again, sir. You wanted to be the cool girl, but when the heat came, you fucking melted. So what is really the truth? Apparently all of that good old coin and fame ain't quite enough to pad you from the small pricks of critique that you are so apparently unfazed by. Because if so, then it's like, okay, nigga, please stop coming to us crying about cancel culture every other year if you are supposedly so fine. But that's the thing. He is not. And it goes way beyond any imagined gripe with cancel culture. I think this whole issue with Mr. Hart really allows us to explore the intersections of where race, class, and heteropatriarchy all meet and are exacerbated by the ubiquitous neoliberal mindset of this country. Many people, not just men and not just black men, but I'll say patriarchy incentivizes men in particular to maintain a mindset in which they are not responsible to their community at large, for society at large, that they answer to the concerns of no one, even as a highly prolific public figure with popular influence. If any one of you have watched Kevin's Netflix docuseries called, what was it called? Don't Fuck This Up. That's what it was called. If any of you have seen his little docuseries called Don't Fuck This Up, which is a very telling title, it's the one that he made to try to clean up his image after being caught cheating on his wife and getting fired from his Oscar gig for not apologizing for, a violently homophobic joke that he made in one of his early comedy specials. That same one. I only watched some of it, and only because corny niggas, especially corny niggas who are as arrogant as a Kevin Hart, tend to fascinate me because I always want to explore why they are that way. From a distance, because I can't handle all that noise and screaming and shit. I truly cannot. And in that little series, it became clear how much Kevin Hart wants to be perceived as a good man and a positive dude, right? But he is indeed fucking it up quite regularly. Like so many men like him who are caught up in the intersections of race, masculinity, and class, this 6-part insight showcases how Kevin Hart is often posturing and performing to convince himself that he's okay, that he's good and positive and doing the right thing, on the right track. And to have people out here saying that he's not, and that he is in fact contributing to harm, it's corrupting his sense of self, and he doesn't really know what to do with that. Like, it's kind of sad in a way, but also very fucking frustrating, because it's like, sir, a lot of this mess could have been prevented. And also, people have been trying to call you in for reformation for over at least half a decade now, but you keep doing the same shit and acting like that shit don't sting. Huh? And then we supposed to have sympathy for the girls? I don't know. But let's dive into it a little bit. Kevin came from a working class household in Philly where he was raised by his mother, Nancy, who unfortunately died when Kevin was just starting to become famous. His father was either a drug addict or an alcoholic, I don't remember which. He had some sort of substance abuse issues and was regularly in and out of jail throughout Kevin's childhood. And I'm just going through a little bit of his early biography just because I think it's important to how and who he is now. Oh wow. Not us having the same birthday. I did not know that. Okay, I don't know what to do with that information. But anyway, there are many, many times in this docu-series in which he is insistent on telling us that he is unaffected by all of this. His mother's death, his father's substance abuse and absence, and the various adversities that he's faced before fame and wealth. But just because we insist things don't affect us doesn't mean that it doesn't, right? Like, we can convince ourselves to believe most things if we don't have the necessary faculties to face it. Someone else said this, and I apologize to them because I do not remember who, but they said something along the lines of, the closest thing that we as humans have to magic is self-deception. And we practice it all the time in order to just get by, right? Especially in a capitalist society in which our value is measured in material accomplishment, not in healing or self-recovery. And thus, we are all incentivized to be highly functioning depressives with anxiety and unpacked trauma. Add on the patriarchal belief that admitting vulnerability, especially emotional vulnerability, is a weakness, and you have a recipe for self-negligence. And then at the racial intersection that asserts a black man particularly has no time to be vulnerable in this America, not if he wants to survive. And thus the workaholic impetus is embedded in Kevin Hart's work as a way to avoid assessing his own traumas and complex emotions. But just because you've achieved success in despite of those traumas and unassessed complicated emotions does not mean that they have just poof, disappeared. And I also don't think that we talk enough about how traumatic it is to go from being broke to being immensely wealthy. Because often what happens is the dichotomy of those experiences are always chasing after each other, or it always seems like they're chasing after each other. And it very easily breeds an anxiety around money. What if something happens and I go back to being broke? Especially since he has, a wife and kids to look after. He literally says this in his little docuseries, that is an anxiety of his that propels his workaholic 24/7 hustle all day mentality. Like, I'm not a therapist. I have no authority to diagnose anyone with anything, but it's not hard to see how Kevin is likely moving out of trauma and emotional self-neglect, at least in this regard. So with all of that said, I guess, how can we expect him to have the ability to recognize how he's causing harm when he's never been able to really settle down and slow down to assess his own shit, let alone how it fits into the rest of the world? And also, because he's achieving all of the markers of masculinity and class excellence in maintaining the ideal conception of what a black king should be doing or should be in our modern world. So to him, I'm sure it's like, how can I possibly be the bad guy here? He's still focusing on his self-conceptualized idea of who he wants to be and measuring that from the place he was before he was famous. There was an interview that he did with John Rogan, who is just embarrassing in his own right, but in it, literally in the thumbnail of the video, I think, Kevin, says, it's not cool to be positive in our society. It's cool to be negative. Meaning he thinks, or he feels like people are trying to bring him down because these haters are frustrated with their own lives and projecting that frustration onto a positive, successful black man like him, because it's easy to do because he's a black man and he's successful, and also it's cool to be contrarian, and they just want to see the spectacle of him as an angry black man, and he won't acquiesce to that. He's too positive. When it's like, nigga, this ain't got nothing to do with no goddamn neurotypical positivity. But let me be as empathetic as I can with this man who is just always seems to be left of the actual problem. From his perspective, I could see how he could perceive that, right? Just with how our society is set up. Mainstream America already loves the spectacle of a celebrity's fall from grace. We've seen it many, many times before. But there is also a special, insidious, and deeply historical pang of mainstream satisfaction that comes from witnessing a popular black celebrity fall and flounder. And I'm sure there are some hateful people out there who probably do want to see him fail. But he maintains the same assertion of they're all haters who aren't positive towards those who try to call him in, as well as those who call him out. And again, where has Kevin Hart failed and floundered? His career has literally been pretty steadfast compared to most black celebrities. I mean, it's probably because he's a one-note joke machine and mainstream America loves a predictable black man, but successful nonetheless. So it truly seems like Kevin is trying to find reasons to explain away the anxiety that he says doesn't bother him, but again, clearly does. And it's a displaced anxiety that is a lot less superficial than he seems to recognize. And we sitting here talking about Kevin Hart right now, but guess what? A lot of people do this. A lot of us black people do this. Work, so as to hide from those feelings of emotional vulnerability, because in American society, our vulnerability in particular is very likely to be our downfall. But as Will Smith himself said, we cannot achieve our way out of our childhood wounds and traumas. All we're doing when we do that is reifying the systems of neoliberal capitalism that again incentivizes us to ignore our own emotions and those of others in order to amass material possession that we can't take with us to the grave. And not to say that we can't want nice things or want to achieve great things, but not in favor of neglecting ourselves and each other. And that's what's so frustrating about this corny ass nigga. Like, I have empathy for his story and why he is this way and why he perceives a lot of cancel culture and all of that this way. But that don't make his thoughtlessness okay. He is so zoned in on the fact that he has a family and wealth in a way that he didn't when he was growing up. He gets to be the father he didn't have. And, we put so much on men to be just a provider. Like, the bar is so low in that way. Be a sperm bank and a literal bank. Damn, that's it? Is that the only thing most men feel like they can add to their family unit? Everything else falls short? And on that note, just in regard to the Red Table Talk Kevin Hart did with Will Smith, that little section when they were both talking and laughing about how little they do in regard to the actual nurturing of their children as they grow, like, kind of embarrassing, kind of lame, kind of weird. Like, to say that you're the last resort to change the diaper of the child that you made with another person, it's weird to me, and calls for embarrassment, quite honestly. Not that everyone is ecstatic to change a diaper. And, like, I know y'all are rich and y'all likely have nannies and caretakers and whatnot, but to insist that you, the father, are the very last resort in the important bonding, nurturing duties towards your own child really says a lot, and not in a good way. Or I'm sorry, or was that a joke, Kevin? Was that a joke, Kevin? Was you know, you got to ask him, because life is just a barrel of jokes for him. So you never know. He's a positive guy who likes to joke, you know. But really, the whole thing is truly interesting to me. Now, I will say, just given the standards of Hollywood, where most of the producers and executives are white as hell, it is often that black people, black artists, although I wouldn't necessarily call Kevin Hart an artist, it is often that black artists get stuck doing the same things over and over again, because that's what these white execs see them as, a one-trick monkey that they can cash in over and over and over again. So, could it possibly be that Kevin only knows how to do this one type of entertainment, this one type of comedy? Is he just stuck in the turning wheels of Hollywood capitalism because he's good at hitting the same old jokey notes that are tired and familiar, but, you know, good enough to earn him a thick check? Perhaps. But also, at this point, I do feel like Kevin has worked so much and amassed influence and clout in Hollywood and beyond that he could do more than that and be more than that if he really wanted to. After all, in his little docuseries, he and his family speak highly of his work ethic and his will to carve out a path for himself against all odds. So, I don't know, perhaps there is still time in his career to do so, again, if he wanted to. But the question is, would the fan base he has maintained even throughout various public faux pas stick by him after such a significant change? Or will they shame him for it? And is the risk worth it? Because we know that many people don't really have a problem with being problematic and even revel in it. Again, a lot of people like the ease of that low-hanging fruit. So, you never know. Just interesting to think about. Like, imagine a more refined Kevin Hart. Imagine me not referring to him as that corny nigga. One can dream. But, you know, I don't know if I'm just giving Kevin too much credit before we see any sort of real change. But it seems like that he's trying to finally at least attempt to understand where people are coming from. Although he's still squawking about cancel culture. But it's like, I guess he's trying to, you know. I mean, if his own daughter had to sit him down and talk to him about how his comedic stylings were harmful to them and other people, and he's still shriveling his face up in incredulity, then, yeah, who knows? Who the fuck knows? But for real, I'm still on that $8,000 bottle of wine, sis. Like, damn, okay. Hell, I wish I could get an $8,000 bottle of wine. I'm critiquing Kevin. Send it on over. Shit, the girls could pay a few bills with that. But anyway, let's move on. So, Derek Chauvin, the violence worker who murdered George Floyd last summer, has been sentenced to 22.5 years in prison. Now, this will be relatively short because I don't really have much of anything constructive to say in this regard. Um, hmm. As someone who is more and more leaning towards prison abolition, I have trouble celebrating any sort of sentencing that reifies our carceral system. Our supposed justice system's version of justice is so limited that it can only truly legitimize and uplift itself as its own definitions of justice that often bypass the victims who are most affected by the crime. And in this case particularly, and historically, police have been murdering unarmed black people for so many decades with no convictions and barely any indictments that whatever sentencing came, it was always bound to feel like a bit of a letdown. So, Chauvin's pusillanimous defense attorney was correct in stating that a great number of people would view any sentence the judge pronounced as overtly lenient and insufficient to satisfy justice. But more to the point, our supposed justice system does not have the wherewithal to bequeath justice, not for George Floyd's family, nor any black family, nor any black person in this country. For America, the saying goes that justice is blind. It is to express strict impartiality and objectivity in terms of the law. But how can that be when so much of our law, particularly in regard to the most punitive, was curated off of the flesh and bone of our black ancestors, some of whom are still living today? Seems sis was peeking from under that blindfold, huh? And saw the utility of black skin and how it could be manipulated to give draconian definition to law and order. And one of the few times a violence worker in blue is subject to the clutches of it, a certain group sits by clutching their pearls while another sighs in exhausted relief. But as lawyer and organizer Derica Purnell spoke to on Twitter after the sentencing was announced, relief is not justice. Before he was shipped off to prison to begin serving his sentence, Derek had a few words of condolence for the Floyd family, bizarrely stating that he hopes other information that would come out later will give them some peace of mind, whatever the hell that means. But really, it's the words of Derek Chauvin's mother, Carolyn Pawlenty, that really did it for me. She notes her son as loving, thoughtful, honorable, and selfless. She also seemed proud of his 19 years on the Minneapolis police force. 19 years terrorizing communities in which he was repeatedly reported for excessive force. 19 years that resulted in him killing a man with flippant disregard and a smirk on his face. I wonder what gang he joined that contributed to such a drop in character. I guess we'll never know. The fact that Miss Pawlenty publicly named Derek her favorite son as her last words, really says a lot in the absolute worst way. And it really hints toward my theory that a big reason why racism persists in this country, or in general, is because of the prevalence of white family dysfunction that ekes out into the rest of the world in really chaotic and violent ways. But the lack of empathy or even acknowledgement of the Floyd family's loss and of what her favorite son did is a surprising look into the dynamics that likely fostered her son's flagrant lack of decency. And after all, the seeds of violent bigotry and racism are often planted, nurtured, and sprout right in the home. So no, the public will never know how loving, thoughtful, honorable, and selfless your favorite son, Derek, could theoretically be, because he chose to reduce himself to that of a murderous racist in a moment where, if he were so loving, thoughtful, honorable, and selfless, he could have made the decision to act in such a way on that fateful day. Unfortunately for you, for George Floyd himself, and his family, your son truly revealed himself to be a fallow, reprehensible man. A good and honorable boy he was not. Let's move on. Britney Spears and the fuckery of this conservatorship. What in the hell is going on, sis? Last I heard about this whole Free Britney situation, it was from the, what was that, the New York Times special that aired on like Hulu or FX, I think. And apparently, I was just naive to think that the whole thing would eventually, sooner than later, wrap itself up with this publicly documented condemnation. As you know, it wasn't the most well-made documentation, but it did what it was supposed to do. A publicly documented condemnation of what is very clearly an exploitative arrangement. But no such luck. So just for those who may be unclear on what a conservatorship is, it is apparently a legal arrangement that gives a court-appointed individual known as a conservator the power to handle the financial and or personal affairs of another adult who has been deemed incapacitated, either because of like old age or mental and or physical limitations. Now, I don't think every conservatorship is like inherently evil or exploitative. Some of them might actually be needed and also can help people who might be at risk of being taken advantage of. However, just with how this country's systems are set up, which extend from the violent exploitative foundations of chattel slavery and more, from entertainment to law, these systems thoroughly motivate violation and exploitation of this nature. So clearly some reformation in regard to conservatorships and guardian laws needs to be done. Recently, Britney made a pleading statement in court requesting an end to the conservatorship that she has been placed under since 2008. About around the same time, she was dealing with the fallout of a mental health crisis that we all, even myself, I cannot lie, exploited for our own amusement. And my, it certainly was a different time back then when no one really gave any kind of a fuck about mental health nor saw the humanity of celebrities. I mean, a lot of people still don't, but especially not in the 2000s. And largely because there was more of a glamoring distance between us and the uber rich and famous. It was a time before the social media boom where now we can literally interact with celebrities online and develop our own parasocial relationships with them. But those 2000s, bitch, especially in the early 2000s, we let a lot of heinous shit slide that we just don't do now, including piling onto someone, even celebrities, struggling with their mental health. But we all remember Britney fucking up them paparazzi hoes with that umbrella and the haircut she gave herself, which I think can be viewed as a symbolic protest against the exploitative celebrity culture that traumatized her and that had a big impact on her disintegrating mental health. And it was around the same time that she was likely suffering from postpartum depression, so I'm sure a bunch of motherfuckers up in her face trying to take pictures and shit didn't help. And just the nature of celebrity culture, especially around young women during that time, was particularly brutal and exploitative and just flat out atrocious, right? I mean, it's not like, excuse me, oh my God. It's not like it's gotten that much better since then, or rather it's just changed in how it articulates itself. But at least we're more aware and having more earnest conversations about these issues in ways that we just were not back then, during the era of Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie and Lindsay Lohan and all of that, right? But yeah, Britney made a 20-something minute statement that was leaked to the public, and if anyone has listened to any of it, like, you can literally hear the anger and frustration in her voice as she speaks about this demoralizing, isolating situation that has caused her such distress for over a decade. And her statement was very thorough in outlining the depth of the exploitation that has been going on, things far more invasive than I would have ever even imagined, quite honestly. Like changing her medications without her consent, lying to her therapist, can't go to the doctor whenever she wants to, just playing weird mind games to legally trick her into doing stuff, apparently forcing her to keep an IUD so she can't have a baby with her current boyfriend. Like truly diabolical shit that I think most parents would be irate over if they heard their daughter was being handled in this way. But her father, Jamie Spears, I guess is too busy counting that coin to be concerned. I mean, he certainly moved swiftly to make himself the permanent conservator over Britney and her estate. Which is wild because it was largely Britney's mother, Lynn Spears, who helped her daughter become the pop star that she was in the 90s and 2000s. And sis is still celebrity icon status, obviously, but none of that longevity came from the diligent attention and coaching of her father. It was her mother and the team she amassed to help nurture Britney's talents. And from the few interviews and moments that I've seen that have involved Britney's father, this motherfucker seemed aloof as fuck, and doesn't really seem to understand or want to understand his daughter in any other way but the ways that he can benefit from being in proximity to her, and I'm sure most importantly to him, her money. Especially since their relationship is obviously contentious. And with how this motherfucker is out here having drinking problems and getting into physical altercations with Britney's children, it's more than strange that he is the one handling Britney's estate. Now, apparently, girl, not me sounding like Wendy Williams, girl. Anyway, apparently, it's not just her father who is reaping the rewards of this callous arrangement, but also Britney's family in general, including Miss Jamie Lynn Spears, who very recently broke her enabling silence in regard to this matter, because Britney's statement was again leaked to the public, and the family members who have been silent don't want to look complicit, even though they have been so for quite a long moment. And, hey, maybe Jamie Lynn wasn't actually aware of the depth of the abuse and is actually shocked to hear the reality of it in her own sister's words, right? Maybe. But I don't know. Just because the Spears family, they come off, to me, I guess, they come off as a little weird in that small town country bumpkin way, where is actually where they're from, the small Louisiana town of Kentwood, where the population is just over 2,000 and some change. And I don't mean to sound elitist or anything in saying that, but y'all know how in some small towns, some like small country towns, there can be these long-held traditions and family dynamics that no one really talks about, but listlessly and baselessly abides by. That's what the Spears family gives. That's what they're giving, honestly, especially in regard to the situation, because don't nobody seem in a rush to help their star sister and just letting dad make the decisions while everyone sits by in obedient silence. But again, I'm just speculating, so you never know. But what is clear is that this conservatorship has long gone beyond any concern for Britney's mental health or well-being, and has instead implanted itself in her life as a fixture bent on attaining control and money, the usual pillars of patriarchal capitalism. Like James Parnell Spears, what are you doing, sir? Besides being a despicable parasite on your own daughter. Like, it ain't my place to condemn hoes to damnation or anything, obviously. But the girls are going to hell for this one. Like, girl. Like, threatening to sue Britney if she doesn't perform to make your asses money? And how is it that sis can be mentally and physically aware enough to go on stage and perform for sold-out shows, direct choreography, sing, and all of that, be well enough to entertain you hoes, yet apparently not maintain the physical and mental capabilities to handle her own finances and make her own life decisions? I don't know, but it really does seem like we're intentionally tiptoeing around the elephant in the room called abuse. What's truly fucked up is that I'm sure Jamie and Britney's father and his lawyers have used all of those aforementioned infamous paparazzi photos and celebrity gossip from entertainment news media outlets as evidence for why Britney is so unfit to be in control of her own life. Like, do y'all know how much a good picture of an irate celebrity sold for back then to those weirdo celebrity gossip magazines? Motherfuckers could live off of that shit for months on end. And Miss Britney Spears was definitely a hot target for them. But like, just what a sick way to take advantage of your own child's struggle with their mental health. Like, they were down for a moment and you just had to swoop in and take advantage of that moment. Like, wow. Quite despicable. But again, we all did in different ways, that is. Like, I remember I was younger and the tabloids and the news, y'all was really out here having a field day with this shit, like with Britney's gradual mental breakdown, calling her all kinds of dumb blondes and white trash and addicts and unfit mothers and crazy womans, all sorts of shit. People at school making all sorts of jokes at her expense, the way her name became synonymous with crazy, the way Britney pretty much became a running gag for so many popular TV shows and movies for a long while. SNL skits and shit. And the media at the time, around 2007, definitely had a pointed misogynistic pathology towards tearing down female pop stars as they reached a certain age, and even more so as they began to settle down and get married and have children. It's wild how many forms of entertainment we as a culture can milk out of a single person's suffering, and it really does say something awful about the consumptive nature of our society, the fun we get out of decontextualizing someone's pain. That we love to watch a celebrities fall from grace, probably more than we like to watch their ascension to fame. Again, especially of that of a female pop star as big as Britney Spears. And it's all spurred by the feverish consumption of celebrity culture in which we can't get enough of knowing what's going on with our favorite celebrities, right? Every second of every day, from the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. And because they are lauded public figures and idols, and because we live in a patriarchal society that motivates possession of women entertainers particularly, we feel like we have some semblance of ownership to them. We've invested time and maybe even money in them, right? So, damn it, we deserve a show. We want a show, motherfucker. We crave that good old entertainment. It don't matter if it's of you living your best, most glamorous life or living through the worst hellish dysfunction you can imagine. We demand a show. And how dare you try to avoid satiating this irrational need by appealing to our humanity? We don't give a shit about that. We gonna get that good old entertainment one way or another. And guess what? Look what it costs. So when Chris Crocker prophetically screamed for us to leave Britney Spears the fuck alone, we probably should have listened. Interestingly enough, we don't move in the same way when it comes to male celebrities, and definitely not male pop stars. In fact, we even coddle celebrity men who do frankly reprehensible things, and many of them still have careers. The wonders a trip to rehab and a marriage does to rehabilitate a male celebrity's image after they've done some bullshit, especially compared to a female celebrity, truly insane. But with women, we gonna have a lot to say. We definitely gonna have a lot to say, bitch, and we quickly become vulturous when they're down. Now, me personally, I'm not compelled by the cult of celebrity and fame, no matter how spectacular their talents or fat their pocketbooks. Now, a celebrity or a famous person's work as an artist and entertainer is something else entirely. Like, I can thoroughly be obsessed with an artist's work and media contribution if I believe they're creating quality material. I mean, for instance, this whole fiasco has really reintroduced me to my favorite Britney songs and albums, like Baby One More Time, In the Zone, Blackout, bitch, Circus. Ugh. Now that was some pop music, bitch. That was some pop music for your ass, truly and duly. But, you know, beyond that, celebrities are just another person like you or me. Fallible, annoying, desperate, needy, weird, insecure, and ugly. Just like we all are on this beautiful green and blue motherfucking earth. But from a cultural criticism standpoint, the cult of celebrity is very interesting to me as a field of study. Like, you know, people taking off from work to go march in front of a courthouse to free Britney. That's fascinating to me. Just the things that stimulate that sort of devotion to someone many of us will never even have the chance, the pleasure, or possible displeasure of meeting. But what's so useful about this status of celebrity is the bandwidth of celebrity platforms, how they're able to push out ideas and concerns farther than most of us can ever wish to reach. And the thing that Britney's celebrity status has done in regard to this whole conservatorship fiasco is that it has raised significant awareness of the exploitation a lot of people suffer under conservatorships, and how those stories often go unnoticed. This conversation around Free Britney has illuminated a reality many of us would have stayed completely ignorant to without the far-reaching power of fame. So that's the singular thing that I can give fame that is most meaningful and most useful. Because if this is happening to a world-renowned celebrity as recognizable as a Britney fucking Spears, then we know that it's been happening to people who don't have as nearly as much resource or concern thrown their way. And it always happens to those who we silence and shut away the most in this society because we deem them useless to the driving initiatives of American meritocracy, productivity, industry, and work. Again, the elderly and those with physical and or mental limitations. Those we sequester away from the rest of society because they remind us of our own weakness, our own fragility and limitations. It's also telling that according to statistics, women are most likely to be victims of this kind of conservatorship exploitation than men. Britney's entire career from young girl to fully grown adult has been suffused with exploitation. She's definitely not the only one, but she's certainly one of the biggest, most obvious examples of sustained exploitative abuse that we can point to and use as an example of how our nation's laws and societal expectations are set up in ways that disproportionately disadvantage and exploit women's vulnerabilities, particularly, even wealthy, famous white women. That is, when the perfect storm of opportunity leaves them most susceptible to this kind of abuse as well. So, what does that say about the women who don't have the same markers of privilege as a Britney Spears? If it takes all of this media circus and fans rallying for her to even give her a chance of being relinquished from what is, again, an obvious arrangement of exploitation, what does that say about Black and brown women, women who have mental and or physical limitations, elderly women, and more who don't have the resource of fame at their disposal to assist them? I think we know. But I think this situation also says a lot less about the people most susceptible to being taken advantage of in this way, and more about the laws and structures that are supposedly designed to prohibit said exploitation. It says a lot about disability rights in this country, or rather this nation's lack thereof, and also a lot about the vulturous origins of our society. Let's take the case of the Native American Osage tribe of Oklahoma, for example. I don't think I need to go over the history of how those in this country who believe themselves to be white have more than exploited Native Americans as a whole. And the tradition of oppressive pillaging has not gone anywhere, it's only embedded itself in American law over time. In this specific situation, opportunistic whites migrating to Osage, Oklahoma in the late 1910s and early 1920s were in search of oil and read how the Osage tribes were renowned for their land. So these whites lobbied to erect seemingly moral guardianship laws, which are basically conservatorship laws by another name, that were said to help organize and protect the Osage tribe's finances. Because those white hoes just assumed that these natives had no ability to manage their own shit, apparently, So under these new guardianship laws, Osage tribe adults would be appointed a white guardian who would ensure the maintenance of their wealth. But American and European law is more often than not convoluted as shit as a way to legitimize the need for consumers to consult lawyers in order to act in their best interest, or in some cases to even act at all. Such was the case with these convoluted guardianship laws that made doing something as simple as grocery shopping an endeavor that needed permission and bureaucratic validity from said white guardians. So you can imagine how exploitation quickly became the name of the game in this deceitful conspiracy to steal the Osage tribe's land, which was indeed brimming with oil. And all of this further contributed to the Osage Indian murders that occurred between the 1910s and 1930s, in which some of the whites didn't even bother with further manipulation, but in true savage form, simply killed their charges instead so they could acquire the inheritances of land and wealth in full. Now, that story might seem completely disseparate from Britney Spears and her conservatorship and modern conservatorships in general, but it highlights the successive line of how exploitation in this country has articulated itself. It's just a mere illustration of how the incentives to exploit, pillage, and plunder are deeply historical and integral to the systematic framework of our law and societal attitudes. In Britney's court statement, she noted that for so long she was unaware that she could request the end of the conservatorship. And even then, to do so means mounting tons and tons of evidence to prove oneself mentally competent enough to make their own life decisions. But so much of that evidence can be subjective, and in this case, once legally sentenced under a conservatorship, it's rather difficult to get out from under one. And once deemed incapacitated enough to be put under one, the conservatee is pretty much treated similarly to that of a minor. And we know how little protections there are in regard to children's rights in this country and beyond. So that also says a lot about the patronizing nature of conservatorships in general. And even when Britney was able to recently get a professional conservator, I think her name is Jody Montgomery, as a way to lessen her father's grip of control, it's known that professional conservators can also be just as exploitative because, they're out here trying to make a living, and having a wealthy conservatee like Britney Spears as your client, again, there is incentive to exploit for one's own benefit, which Britney herself alluded to in her statement as well. So with all of this, we can see how the nature of our legal system also takes full advantage of people's trust and or ignorance, while also incentivizing said trust and ignorance because, duh, you should be able to have the resources to acquire the necessary legal advice needed to avoid falling into these kinds of traps, dummy. But what happens when those individual advisors and even family, those our law gives blind legal credence to via the link of blood and biology, the ability to make decisions on our behalf? What happens when they too are leaning into the historical systemic impulse to exploit your trust and your ignorance for individual gain? Again, I think we know. And it just goes to show how susceptible we all are to this historical cycle birthed from an impulse that stems directly from the basis onto which this country and so much of Western society was founded and built, from and by violent exploitation. And you think that shit ain't gonna get up into our laws? Because it most definitely is. Our law is not interested in acquiring justice for the most vulnerable in our society, but rather it's designed to uphold and legitimize itself. So never think that just because we have scaled some hierarchies, gotten rich and famous, gotten out of the small Louisiana town and made it big, that we have transcended what gives those hierarchies that wealth, that fame, and that idolatry definition, the very exploitation that makes it so coveted, so envied, and so admired. And also the thing that animates our collective excitement in witnessing the mighty and famous fall so hard. A mess, truly. So yeah, I would say it's about goddamn time for some reformation, or rather, abolition. But let's move on to our last topic. Isn't it great how it always takes the words of a white man to make people pause and think a little bit? Literally every single fucking time. So basically, last week, or maybe it was the week before, I don't necessarily remember which, but within the past month, I believe, the U.S. chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Army General Mark Milley, or Milley, whichever one, General Mark shook the table a little bit for the girls at a House Armed Services Committee hearing in which he voiced support and interest in critical race theory.
First of all, on the issue of critical race theory, et cetera, I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university. And it is important that we train and we understand. And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend?
So we know the American right has been flipping its shit over critical race theory for a while now. And not just America, but tellingly, other imperialist empires have also taken to the trend of suppressing critical race theory, which is just another way to say, hey, we ain't really trying to have y'all here talking about race no more. Shut up. Shut that shit right the fuck up, bitch. Shut up. Basically. And thus the scapegoat of critical race theory comes into sharp focus, because if you can start suppressing some of the most complex theories around race and racism in America, then usually what follows is de facto shushing of any talk of race whatsoever. But let's get into what critical race theory actually is, because I see motherfuckers don't read, so let's do a little bit of skimming. I do have the book of key writings of critical race theory right in front of me, so I guess that makes me a bit of an extremist, huh? All right, let's see. So while there's not necessarily a singular definitive definition of critical race theory, generally it is a theoretical framework and intellectual movement grounded in critical theory that explores the ways the American legal system has historically centralized and been complicit in upholding white supremacy, and along with it, hierarchies of gender, class, and sexual orientation. Basically, it asserts that the reality of racism is a common experience for people of color in America, and that the existence of said racism has systemic and institutional benefits for white people. It interrogates not only blatant and overt white supremacy and racism, but also the subtle ways passive American liberalism pussyfoots around the reality of sustained white dominance with its convoluted post-race fantasies. Critical race theory studies how unconscious bias that favors whiteness is literally baked into America's systems and much of the West in general, and how that bias is more often than not a deterrent for people of color. Critical race theory explores how that bias articulates itself in varied, multifaceted, and nuanced ways that are often hidden and thus go overlooked. That's generally what it is, exposing how this nation got this way through theory and critique. And there are some competing ideas within critical race theory, so again, it's not something one can just wrap up with a neat and tidy bow the way that our rigid systems and limited understandings tend to insist. Legal scholars Derek Bell, Kimberly Crenshaw, Richard Delgado, Mari Matsuda, Patricia J. Williams, Charles R. Lawrence III, Alan Freeman, and Cheryl Harris all contributed to this ever-evolving theory in the mid-1970s, the basis of which stemmed from early thinkers and scholars and writers like W.E.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, and many more. And there's also a healthy touch of radical feminism in there as well, just for good measure. So, as you can see, it's certainly something those invested in maintaining and consolidating power would want to keep the people from seriously engaging with. The way these conservatives are coordinating with uncharacteristic swiftness to erect laws banning the teaching of critical race theory, it's wild. Like, damn, you would think critical race theory is poisoning motherfuckers' water supply, burning their crops, and delivering a plague onto their motherfucking houses. Like, are we okay? Don't answer that question because I already know what the answer is. Like, we got Pennsylvania Senate candidate Sean Parnell on motherfucking Fox News insisting that teaching critical race theory in U.S. militaries will, quote, cost lives on the battlefield. Because apparently, to accomplish the mission, and I quote, we didn't focus on our many differences. There were no hyphenated Americans with us in Afghanistan. What we realized was our secret weapon was it wasn't the sexy guns and equipment that we had. It was the love and brotherhood that we had for one another that allowed us to defeat the enemy at every single turn. That's really, really cool. The fact that America's most virulent patriots suddenly turn into the loudest, proudest sponsors of colorblind love and brotherhood when it's most beneficial to their mission, which is usually some sort of imperialist fuckery, is unsurprising. But, wait until a family member brings home a brown person, and then suddenly the uprightness of whiteness dissolves like sugar in hot water, baby. But hey, it's Fox News, so chicanery and buffoonery come with the territory, I guess. Then, who else? Who else is out here giving their hot takes on critical race theory? Oh, weirdo televangelist Pat Robinson of the 700 Club fame. Good God.
What is it that the people of color have been oppressed by the white people, and the white people begin to be racist by the time they're 2 or 3 months old, and therefore the people of color have to rise up and overtake their oppressors, and then, having gotten the whip handle, if I can use that term, then to instruct their white neighbors how to behave. Now that's critical race theory.
Oh, bitch. Wow. Wow. This old bitch said, once we get the whip handle, once we get the motherfucking whip handle, bitch, we gonna instruct these white hoes how to behave. I am fucking screaming. That's what we gonna do? That's what we doing? Bitch, okay. Hell, sounds like a plan to me. Hey, he said. But nah, for real. This is the same motherfucker who said feminism encouraged women to leave their husbands, kill their children, and practice witchcraft that would destroy capitalism. If only, bitch. If motherfucking only. I mean, not killing the children, obviously. But leaving your husbands, leaving your whack-ass husbands and practicing capitalism, ending witchcraft?
I would like to see it.
Truly and duly, I would like to see it. But damn, white people really have such a weird-ass pathology and love affair with the antiquity and pageantry of good old antebellum slavery, that whenever they think about what justice or recompense would look like in regard to racial reconciliation in this country, they can't help themselves but go straight to the horrific violence that their ancestors inflicted upon ours. A guilty conscience will always reveal its hand. The fear of revenge is what fuels white pathology and supremacy. It's the main fear that makes whiteness combust when there are too many melanated beauties in the room. It's what paralyzes this country from social evolution and being an actual civil society, not one desperately feigning civility till the point of dangerous delusion, which is apparently the point we've reached in this country. A slew of states banning the teaching of critical race theory in K-12 schools, although, as anyone who puts in any sort of thought on this has been saying, critical race theory isn't even taught in K-12 public schools, and barely in most private schools. Here in America? Y'all thought y'all were that sharp? Nah. So basically, the appropriation of the term critical race theory is again a scapegoat and smokescreen to get ignorant people scared of things that they don't really understand to go along with the banning of what is just literal American history about race in America. In the coded way, conservatives use the descriptor as a catch-all to try to avoid talking about how this country's backbone is anti-black racism. Those three words: critical race theory. Critical because, America historically doesn't do well under the microscope of cultural and social political critique. Race because everyone's been investing in deconstructing it lately, and that has hoes in power a bit shook. In theory, because colonized minds don't really have much of a wherewithal, let alone the sociological imagination, for such inquiry beyond the individualistic neoliberal perspective. So again, it's a perfect catch-all to encourage more negligence of this country's history, so the powerful aren't suffused with questions of how they've climbed their way into power, because critical race theory puts more than a few dents into the mythology of the American dream and the ruling ideals of neoliberal meritocracy. But this is a tired old conservative strategy. When conservative hoes ain't got nothing else to do, no citizens to help, even though, many are now struggling with the financial fallout spurred by COVID-19, they have to find distraction to cloak their lack of action on behalf of the American people, and they usually do so by labeling and attacking ideas and theories they themselves don't fully understand, and that sounds scary to them as un-American and thus worthy of cancelization. Strange when we consider how many conservatives openly rally against cancel culture, yet become its biggest purporters in order to sustain political relevance. And that's what's most reprehensible about whenever this country gets shook about any piece of institutional criticism. How those in power encourage and incentivize the shutting off of our brains, the discouragement of engagement and thought. We learn the scientific method in school, right? What is it? What are the pillars of it? Observation, question, hypothesis, experiment, analysis, and conclusion, right? But damn, motherfuckers can't even get to observe, let alone question some shit. And that's because power is shook about what kind of hypotheses might be formed under the critical lens of critical race theory, especially with the recent reckoning this country has been stumbling through regarding race. So basically, they're like, nah, motherfucker, shut that shit down right now. We can't have y'all out here with no kind of hypotheses. We can't have y'all out here knowing that this shit is a sham, bitch. Because disillusionment often leaves people in a confused anger. And those in power know how that could easily explode into destruction. I mean, they saw the teensiest glimpse of that during the summer 2020 protests that they, and by they I mean that potato head bitch, Donald Trump, escalated with further state violence and brutality. I mean, white hoes were out here getting they shit fucked up. So we know that they were shook. But hey, that's America for you, always trying to avoid the confrontations it needs to have by creating wars elsewhere. We certainly love a diversion. In fact, speaking of that potato head bitch, the 1776 commission that hoe formulated to promote patriotic education, that mind you was headed by no professional historians, was a direct counter to critical race theory, and most poignantly to the 1619 project that was developed by Nicole Hannah-Jones, which heavily incorporated critical race theory to explore how the conception of American definition was completely dependent on the enslavement of Africans and continues to be dependent on the contributions of Black Americans. This bogus strategy of implementing lame counters to the constructive efforts of Black intellectual thought is a manipulation, one that attempts to mark both as dangerous dichotomies that disrupt the harmonious homogeneity of American civil society. Basically, a baseless charlatan uppercut used to delegitimize Black work and contribution and do what conservatives and racists in this country have always done to Black excellence. Make it monstrous, make it dangerous, and make it cause for destruction. Any light that illuminates the oppressor's exploiting hand must be snuffed out. These hoes think they slick. And whenever Black folks try to defend our personhood either by violent resistance or intellectual work, White supremacy puts in all of its efforts and resources into misrepresenting our defense as inherently degenerative to society as a whole, extremist even, yet has no pointed incredulity for the never-ending torrent of white terrorism that proliferates in the name of American patriotism and nationalism on the regular. It's wild and very telling. But the ubiquitous nature of white supremacy that permeates American institutions and law will always have white people out here contorting themselves through all kinds of ridiculous, laughable convolutions in order to not seem violently racist, even when everything that they're doing and upholding is obviously so. Maybe if they did study a little critical race theory, they would be able to see how complicit they are in these systems of oppression which they deny exist in the first place. Because nothing, and I really do mean nothing, I don't care how many spark notes or scary synopsi you consume, nothing replaces the actual work of reading through the text itself, of engaging with the work itself. So the fact that so many admirals and politicians and supposed leaders and people in power haven't even done the work of engaging with the text, the actual theory itself, yet have such confidence that it will cripple the sanctity of its citizens and soldiers, should say all it needs to say. And actually, it says more about what they think about our capacity for complex understanding than anything, which to me is quite an insult, but, hey, whatever. These hoes heard from a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of someone's weirdo QAnon uncle that critical race theory is crazy scary and that these woke blacks and browns are going to cause the collapse of America. And now here we are, spinning our wheels yet again. Damn, y'all hoes ain't tired? Just shut up and say that you want to hold on to privilege and power and be done with it. Because at this point, if you have fear of critical race theory, you can probably bet your ass that you're a racist, or that you just simply don't understand it and haven't taken the time to do so. And I know that so many of us in this country have this shame-ridden aversion to stating that we don't understand shit, and thus try to bash and banish it away. But there is nothing wrong with admitting that you don't know what some shit is. It's actually just a glorious opportunity to learn some new shit. And I am profoundly frustrated and disgusted by, again, supposed leaders who choose to lead with ignorance and fear, whether knowingly or not, and who are so lazy-minded that they prefer their nation to be one satisfied with arrogant, passive condemnation over active investigation. Piss-poor leadership, the lot of these losers, and its cause for embarrassment. And sure, we are all stumbling through different levels of our own social political evolution at varying speeds for different reasons, which is why it is important to be in communion and learn from those who are in higher levels than others. Share the information and incentivize against separating ourselves into stringent hierarchies of learned people up here and uncultured peasants at the bottom. Because any iteration of hierarchies, even and especially, perhaps especially, in intellectual realms, really just leads to the same old cycles of resentment, violence, and reality distortion. And I don't know if y'all have looked out y'all windows lately, but we can't really keep that motherfucking cycle going for much longer before shit really starts crumbling and collapsing on our asses. And I know we all love to look up at the stars as our possible salvation, like we can easily go colonize Mars or some other planet somewhere. But guess what? Space travel is uncertain as hell. So we might want to shift our attention back to fixing the mess that we got going on down here before we go gallivanting off through space to hide from the mess that we made on Earth. You know, just maybe. And just on a last note, I love theory. Theory is completely liberating. It is without a doubt the best thing I learned in my formal education in college. The power of theory, the liberating power of theory. And actually, please read Bell Hooks' essay, Theory as Liberatory Practice. And if you can, her book, Teaching to Transgress. A classic, bitch. A fucking classic. It is life-changing, truly. At least it was for me. And I think that many Americans, all of whom suffer from a colonized mind, a colonized imagination, because we all do, myself included, we could all do with that read. I read it every once in a while just to remind myself. But particularly her essay, Theory as Liberatory Practice, get into that, truly. In fact, I'm going to leave a little link in the little podcast description so you'll have easy access. That's your little homework. That's your little HomeBodyMedia homework, bitch. Read that. And I do think it would actually be a great precursor into really engaging with critical race theory, because admittedly, critical race theory can be dense. A lot of good theory actually is quite dense. But, bitch, I love me a good, dense academic read. I really do. Just unpacking it is such fun work to me. Taxing, but very fun. And worth so much more than we give credit to in our society. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about this topic here. What is next? Now for Stray Media, the section of the podcast where I briefly talk about a film, a television show, or an episode of television, an album or a song, and a piece of written work, be it an article, book, blog, essay, script, whatever. Something that I found stimulating over the past week or so. First, a film. What film did I watch this week that left an impression? Oh, Luca. Pixar's Luca. Yeah. I did watch the new little Pixar film about the little gay mermaid boys. I sure did. No, but what is the actual synopsis of the film? It was very cute. I was endeared. I was. And I haven't been by a Pixar film in a good while, so there's that. You know, I was touched, but I was not moved. But at this point, I'm not really expecting Disney to be able to pull off that sort of magic again. When was the last time I was like a Disney or Pixar film legitimately moved me? Bitch, I don't even know. You know what? Honestly, the magic of Disney has waned since it's parasitically sucked up so many media companies over the years. So I more so see it as well, you know what? We won't go into that. This is supposed to be a little mini review of Luca, so let's stick to that. If you don't know what the film is about, it's basically a little coming-of-age fable set in the Italian Riviera, in which a young sea creature boy, Luca, explores the surface for the first time during a life-changing summer after befriending an audacious new sea creature boy named Alberto. It's a simplistic story, really, probably Pixar's most simplistic, at least in a decade, about feeling different, being an outsider in your own environment, which is basically what the sea creatures are a metaphor of. So no, it's not no Call Me By Your Name for kids, or what the hell y'all been calling it, Calamari by Your Name. Still, if one wanted to view this film as Pixar's allegorical take on a pair of young gay boys coming out to a homophobic world, it kind of works. I mean, it's overly simplistic in a way that most Disney films are, or maybe as they feel like they have to be when tackling more suggestive material. Like, we scratching the surface, but, you know, it's still viewable as that. Because, I mean, it's pretty much that. You know, Disney, they just don't want to risk messing up their money by plainly stating that it's about little gay boys, because they know how many weirdo conservatives and bigots be going to see their movies and they ain't trying to mess up their coin. You know, we'll have a little tertiary character or a background character have a little LGBT moment far in the back for 2 seconds or something like that. But we ain't trying to really center y'all in no story for real. That's Disney. Truly magical, huh? But yeah, no, I really did enjoy the animation in this film. The director, Enrico Casarosa, says it was inspired by Hayao Miyazaki's animation style, as well as stop motion animation and hand-drawn animation. And it's quite a charming blend. More so when the characters are above the surface in the bright, warm, lush, colorful town of Porto Rosso than in the ocean, which I guess is may have been a purposeful artistic choice to express the new life that is breathed into the titular character Luca as he transgresses to the surface to experience the world he was always so curious about. I also liked the ending in which, a little bit of spoilers, by the way, in which Luca's friend Alberto sells their Vespa to buy Luca a ticket to Genova so that he could explore school for the first time. Because throughout the film, Luca and Alberto go to great lengths to acquire a Vespa so they could travel the world together. But Luca's ambitions divert from Alberto's when he learns more about the world in school from Julia, the girl that they befriend in Porto Rosso. And Alberto gradually grows more and more jealous that Luca is spending more time with Julia, learning and all of that instead of fooling around with him. Basically, he was like, get the fuck away from my boyfriend, bitch. But no, it's basically a convergence that tests their fresh friendship, right? So I thought it was a great thing. It was really great that Alberto was selfless enough and thoughtful enough to arrange for his friend to go to school and relinquish Luca to his own ambitions and passions, while Alberto was able to tend to his own, even as hard as it is for them to say goodbye to one another. I think it's a great thing to highlight for kids and even older people that, you don't have to be possessive of your friends, lovers, family members in order for your relationship to hold significance. Because, goddammit, we live in a society and we have media that often tells us that possession is central to love and relationships of all sorts. And that's such a patriarchal conception of love and companionship that encourages rigidity and dominance, and that just nurtures resentment over time more than anything. Because what's the old maxim? If you love someone, set them free, something like that, right? Because the freedom to self-actualize as a person is so important for everyone. Let them live their lives, and if that love, that bond is so strong, then y'all will eventually find your way back to one another stronger and more ready to evolve the friendship, the relationship, the whatever ship to new heights. Again, a beautiful lesson for the children. Now, the specific musical project that I've been consumed with this week would definitely have to be Doja Cat's new album, Planet Her. Despite her own varied controversies on and off social media, I don't think anyone can deny that she has verified musical talent. Like, there are a slew of bops to consider here. And honestly, each output by Doja has just gotten more and more fun and more dynamic. Like, she has indeed become a versatile force in pop music and in hip-hop as well. Like, she's a very charismatic singer and rapper. Sis can carry a tune and has a talent for riding that beat with a feverish flow. Rules. Hot Pink in general. I still bump that album. But Rules, my favorite Doja Cat song ever, I still bump that shit. Amazing. But in regard to Planet Her, my favorite tracks on the album are Woman, Payday, Getting to It, Yeah. Need to Know, Been Like This, Ain't Shit, Imagine, Kiss Me More. I know a lot of people seem to really enjoy one of the latest singles that she released from the album, You Right, featuring The Weeknd. I just have an unreasonable aversion to Mr. Abel Tesfaye. I really do. Nothing against him. He's just not an artist that does anything for me. But Planet Her as a whole has Doja Cat blissfully, confidently in her own world, and likewise, the album seems designed to encourage the listener to occupy a space of easy elation and fun summertime indulgence. Just with a touch of weirdness and camp. And Doja, she a little weird, in the best way. We will never forget her musical dedication to cows everywhere, moo. She's campy, she's kooky, she's goofy as fuck, and given aforementioned online controversies, a bit messy, but still somehow manages to stay afloat even in that mess, and this album once again proves it. We also know that Doja is a bit of a barb, and you can certainly sense the Nicki Minaj influences in all of her work. I mean, she literally shouts out Nicki in one of the funnest tracks on the album. But that Nicki influence is elevated to new, different, more playful levels that is truly endlessly entertaining. Basically, I'm having a lot of goddamn fun with this album. And yeah, I can foresee a few consecutive weeks of languid pussy popping to this. Yeah, totally. Definitely. You know, nothing profound, just a cute, fun as hell summer album for the girls and gays. It's what we were promised, and it's what we got. Now, if sis can stop working with Dr. Luke, then we'd really be cooking with some grease. But nonetheless, we are enjoying hot alien girl summer. Oh, and just a quick shout out to the good sis Willow Smith and her latest single, Lipstick, from her upcoming album that I am thoroughly anticipating, titled Lately I Feel Everything. The way Willow's foray into music... Foray? I can never say that damn word. Foray? The way Willow's journey into music has developed over the years has been really exciting to hear, truly and duly. And hearing sis take a step into punk pop music is definitely a new highlight for me. I just love when black artists step into that punk rock shit. I really, really do. It's a complete divergence from the last album that she did with, what's her name? Start with a J. The meditation songstress, Genevieve Harold? Genevieve Harrison, that was her name. Genevieve Harrison, the album Rise, that's what it was called, that Willow did with Genevieve Harrison, which was actually one of my favorite projects of 2020. But yeah, this new upcoming album she's doing, this punk pop inspired album, bitch, I am ready, bitch. Definitely one of my most anticipated albums of the year. We cannot wait for July 16th. We will be listening. Now, for television, and I'm late on this one, but I've started watching the HBO Max comedy show Hacks. I haven't completed it yet. I am only 6 episodes in, and I'm not a binge watcher. I've never been, probably never will be. I have to fully digest each episode thoroughly before I move along, so I am sometimes the worst to watch a show with. But yeah, I did not expect to like this show at all, quite honestly. I remember seeing previews of it and kind of just brushing it off as another mediocre generational comedy. But yeah, the first episode was fine, you know, cute little setup. Episode 2 was better, and then from there, each episode just kind of got better and better. Like, it stars Jean Smart and Hannah Binder? Ian Binder? If I'm not pronouncing your name right, sis, I apologize. I didn't look it up. But yeah, Hannah and Jean Smart as the two protagonists from different generations trying to find common ground in the world of comedy and show business, basically. And the show manages to milk a lot out of its Zoomer versus Boomer comedic setup rather than settling for surface level digs at the differences in how comedy standards have shifted since the age of, like, Brad Upton and Joan Rivers. Speaking of, pretty sure Jean Smart's character, Deborah Vaughn, is at least partly inspired by Joan Rivers' career. I don't know for sure because I didn't look it up, but that's what it's giving. And Hannah Ian Binder's character, Ava, with her little Daria combat boots, is just trying to make it work with the old bat. You know, comedy is hard. Comedy, particularly for me, it's very hard for comedy, anything, from TV, movies, stand-up, books. I would just say that I'm rather hard to impress when it comes to comedy, generally. Although a good pun will knock my ass out every once in a while. I like that goofy shit. But yeah, most comedies don't really be hitting for me. Really, the last comedy show that I was for real invested in was Veep, and truly for only the first 4 seasons. I mean, seasons 5, 6, and 7 were all right, but not quite on the same level. But Veep was known for its really acidic and cynical humor, which made sense considering it was a series centering on a fictional vice president and DC politics. But Hacks balances out its crabby humor with some surprising heart that actually helps elevate the show's humor in a fun, more humanistic way, if that makes sense. It also feels like a show that is gradually unraveling itself with slow and specific intent, unearthing the depth of its characters inch by inch, and every episode kind of feels like it's unraveling more of the map of Deborah's public career and her messy private life in a way that explores the shifting wiles of celebrity and comedy over the years of such a long-lasting occupancy of fame. Like, what does that do to a person, especially a woman of a certain age in the realm of comedy? And young comedy writer Ava is coming to terms with her own messy, often solipsistic stumblings to make a life and career of her own. And the pair has a compelling comedic chemistry, and I am enjoying watching their relationship evolve in the series. Yeah, I can definitely see Hacks doing a bit of an award sweep. Like, Jean Smart is without a doubt getting some nominations and at least 1 or 2 wins. I can definitely see that. But really, the whole cast in general is pretty brilliant down to its supporting characters, of whom are so important to the maintenance of any comedy series. It's a breezy, fun summer show, and the episodes fly by. Oh, by the way, there is a lot of cocaine and mentions of cocaine in the show. You know, white people just love them some coke. Like, I realize that the show is set in Las Vegas and LA and all of that, but wow. If there is one thing that I realized about the whites with my time on this earth, is that y'all really be going in on some coke. Damn. Coke fiends for life. I mean, if you're a white that can afford it. Because every predominantly white area that I've lived in or occupied, someone is somewhere doing or offering someone some coke. Do y'all know how many times I've been offered some coke in predominantly white bars and clubs and shit like that? Oh my god. But you know, violence workers in blue always want to crack down on black and brown people with a little marijuana. But anyway, the show Hacks, it's quite good. It's actually quite good. I like it. I'm enjoying it. And even though I'm not finished with it yet, I only have 4 episodes to go, I do feel good about recommending it. It's cute. More than cute, actually. A bit of a hoot. So yeah, Hacks. It's up on HBO Max. If you like a good old comedy, go ahead and check that shit out. Definitely. Now, in regard to reading a written piece of material that has caught my eye this week, okay, so this, I'm kind of late on this one also, but last week, or actually last week, sometime this month, okay, Americana author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, the very same that you can hear speechifying in that Beyonce song Flawless, she wrote a searing blog post, or rather personal essay, that set the internet abuzz for a few days, and I hadn't read it until this past week, and it has definitely been on my mind for various reasons. And I can't find it now. I don't know if it's still up on her blog, which would be a shame because I was going to read a few excerpts from that I found particularly interesting. But it was called "It is Obscene, a True Reflection in 3 Parts." And oh no, wait, it is still up. Okay, apparently I was just looking in the wrong place. Okay, so yeah, basically the blog post, or again personal essay, is in a roundabout way taking social media hypocrisy and cancel culture to task via a story of betrayal. A true occurrence in which Chimamanda befriended a young writer who attended her writing workshop in Lagos, Nigeria, some years ago, and then later deeply betrayed her trust in ways that she found to be truly obscene. And in the in the essay, Chimamanda doesn't really, she doesn't at all name who she's talking about. But y'all know the internet. It didn't take long before social media sleuths uncovered who Adichie was admonishing in that personal essay. Young Igbo and Tamil author Kweke Emezi, the award-winning author of 2018's Fresh Water, a book that I have actually been recommended several times, and indeed look forward to finally reading at some point. Although some also believe Adichie was also talking about a queer activist named Olu Timon Adedbai. I probably butchered that name, I apologize. Olu Timon Adedbai, I believe that's how you pronounce it. I apologize, I have the colonizer's tongue, so if I pronounce the name wrongly, I do apologize. But most consensus, I believe, at least from what I've heard, seen, and read, has largely focused on Kweke Emezi. So the reason why the personal essay garnered so much attention or traction in commentary is because a few years back, I think in 2017, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie voiced an opinion that revealed a trans exclusionary disposition. After being asked in an interview whether being a trans woman makes one any less of a real woman, she responded with, and I quote, "When people talk about are trans women women, my feeling is trans women are trans women. If you've lived in the world as a man with the privileges that the world accords to men and then sort of switched gender, it's difficult for me to accept that then we can equate your experience with the experience of a woman who has lived from the beginning in the world as a woman, and who has not been accorded those privileges that men are." And apparently Kweke Emezi, who is non-binary, was openly critical of Chimamanda's words, calling them dangerous. And it didn't help that Chimamanda later endorsed J.K. Rowling's extremely controversial take on trans women by calling it perfectly reasonable, when it truly just was not. So in the personal essay that Adichie wrote, I guess Adichie mentions how Kweke, again not using her name, took to social media after those comments to call her a murderer and encouraged people to, quote, pick up machetes and attack me. She also states how Kweke spread false narratives about Adichie trying to sabotage her writing career after requesting that her name be removed from Kweke's book cover, which used Adichie's name without permission. Adichie also details how the deaths of her parents were trivialized by some on social media and asserted as a deserved comeuppance for her transphobia. Wild stuff. Well, I thoroughly enjoy Chimamanda's written work. I do, truly. Even this personal essay reads beautifully. The trans exclusionary stuff is really not it. It's very turf-like behavior, and it's very unfortunate to come from such a wonderful writer. But Adichie pivots here in the essay from that topic to touch on the ways that she feels social media has warped people, especially young people's ability to engage in nuanced debate and conversation. So let's read a few passages. The first passage reads as, and I quote, "In this age of social media, where a story travels the world in minutes, silence sometimes means that other people can hijack your story, and soon their false version becomes the defining story about you. Falsehood flies, and the truth comes limping after it," as Jonathan Swift wrote. So here, Adichie wants us all to know that she is aware that we are living in a time in which attraction to the most salacious version of the story is king, even if it is blotted and swelling with embellishments that pummel the truths within into dead afterthoughts. By time veracity reveals itself in full form, we've moved on to the next bit of drama because our poor little attention spans just can't bother to pause for clarification nor verification. And how judicious of her that she's already anticipated and accepted our detachment from this attempt to take back control of the narrative. Another key passage. This one's a bit longer. There are many social media savvy people who are choking on sanctimony and lacking in compassion, who can fluidly pontificate on Twitter about kindness but are unable to actually show kindness. People whose social media lives are case studies in emotional aridity. People for whom friendship and its expectations of loyalty and compassion and support no longer matter. People who claim to love literature, the messy stories of our humanity, but are also monomaniacally obsessed with whatever is the prevailing ideological orthodoxy. People who demand that you denounce your friends for flimsy reasons in order to remain a member of the chosen Puritan class. People who ask you to educate yourself while not having actually read any books themselves, while not being able to intellectually defend their own ideological positions because by educate, they actually mean parrot what I say, flatten all nuance, wish away all complexity. Well, she got us there, girls. No time to unpack the nuance and complexity of trans women's experiences beyond the perceived expectations surrounding one's body and genitalia. Not when we're so busy anxiously trying to deconstruct the unobserved consequences and traumas resulting from the societal neglect of generations past. And really, we ought to apologize for our rudeness in loudly coughing up the remnants of pious skepticism we inherited as a reflex to the shocking deviance that we found plainly nestling under pulpits of faith. There's just no telling where the zeal or impatience for reconstruction came from, or why we attach ourselves to the technological, the virtual, the not real, to blatantly block out the constraints of IRL in order to search for new ways to maybe feel real again. I really do wonder where that impulse came from. And the last key passage that I'll read from Chimamanda's post, her personal essay, is, and I quote, "We have a generation of young people on social media so terrified of having the wrong opinions that they have robbed themselves of the opportunity to think and to learn and to grow. I have spoken to young people who tell me they are terrified to tweet anything, that they read and reread their tweets because they fear they will be attacked by their own. The assumption of good faith is dead. What matters is not goodness, but the appearance of goodness. We are no longer human beings. We are now angels jostling to out-angel one another. God help us. It is obscene." For what it's worth, I don't think Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is wrong in stating that social media is doing something a bit strange and in some ways harmful to us as human beings. I don't. Still, I also don't believe it's an entirely degenerative apparatus. It has its various pitfalls, sure, definitely. But also, a lot of those pitfalls are just exacerbated rehashings of human pathologies that have already existed, but are simply actualizing themselves in new ways because of social media. Human pathologies that sprouted from somewhere not entirely of technology or social media. And again, I enjoy Adichie as the writer, right? Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, the writer. I really do. I won't lie. The first time I did read this entire essay, the writing almost got me to go along with a good chunk of this. Truly. It's just such compellingly expressed drama. However, it is unfortunate that once you get past the beautifully written words and all of that, it is unfortunate that when you really get into what sis is trying to say, it's not nearly as dynamic as the writing itself would have you to believe. That's what's unfortunate. What we have here just feels like an eloquent distraction put to paper. Or, well, in this case, put to blog. A distraction that maybe too hastily interlaces human fallibility, especially that of young people, and the ills of postmodern tools like social media with the progressive social ideologies that prevail. And, far be it for me to tell any writer what to do with their pen, but for this essay to have come out in the middle of Pride Month, it probably would have been more advantageous for Adichie and everyone involved, I think, if she had put her weapon of words to healing, edifying use instead of further obscuring the tired, limping truth by inviting another salacious narrative into the party. Like, illuminate the girls. Don't further shroud us in dissenting uncertainty. But, maybe certain things maybe sis didn't want certain things to be illuminated. Because, on this day, when she wrote this, when she posted this, sis chose violence. She did. No other way to say it. Chimamanda chose violence. So, God help us indeed. Alright, so this has been the first episode of HomeBodyMedia. I'm very glad that I got a chance to sit down and talk some shit with you guys, or rather, shit at you guys. I mean, talk some trash with y'all. Y'all know what I'm trying to say. It was fun, or at least I had fun. I don't know about y'all, but now I am ready to shut the hell up because I have been talking for far too long and my vocal cords are like, what the hell is going on? Shut this shit down. Oh, wait. But before I do, I really must shout out the good sis, that girl who was speed racing on y'all asses, Sha'Carri Richardson. Wow. Truly levitating on the track, styling with the flame bright orange hair, the lashes, the nails, and all. And we love to see it. Sha'Carri is going to the Olympics to show out and show down, and I cannot wait to watch. Congratulations, sis. But yes, again, thank you all for joining me. Please tune in next time. This will likely be like a bi-weekly type situation, most likely, because, a nigga need time to ruminate on how I feel about things going on in the world before I sit down and ramble. So, yeah. But until then, stay diligent, stay thoughtful, stay cautiously open, and we will gather ourselves here yet again at a later date. But for now, it's time for y'all to get on up out of the cozy cottage of cultural criticism. Get on up out of here.
Come here, pussy. Get the fuck out of my goddamn dog.
Bye.